Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Merrigan's Moments in Geography. Today, we're going to be kicking off our look here at Western Europe, and we're going to be starting with United Kingdom and Ireland today. So, what are we going to be able to do today? We're going to be able to name and locate the four parts of the United Kingdom, and then we're going to look at the Republic of Ireland. We're also going to be able to describe the physical and the cultural traits of both the United Kingdom as well as Ireland. And so let's go ahead and dive in with the UK or the United Kingdom. So it should be noted that sometimes we get these two terms of the United Kingdom and Great Britain confused. So Great Britain actually refers to a physical geography island, to the physical geography. So Great Britain would actually consist of this island that we see here. So it would exclude one of the countries of the UK, which would be Northern Ireland. The United Kingdom is more of a political entity. And so it's four nations working together as one. And so we'll be sure to look at those. Now, sometimes Great Britain and the island of Ireland are often referred to as the British Isles. And part of this is despite its very unique culture as compared to uh, the UK, Ireland for a long time was a part of um, the British Empire. And so those two, the UK and the Republic of Ireland, are sometimes referred to as the British Isles. So looking at the UK, again, four nations all working together as one collective government. For my US listeners, it is roughly about the size, if you're looking for a comparison, about the size of Oregon as far as total area. And the UK is made up again of four countries. First one, and this is the most populated, is England, featured pink here on the map. And then you've got Scotland here in the orange. And then you've also got Wales, which would be here as far as Great Britain goes, certainly to the west of England. And then you've got Northern Ireland, which is what is sometimes referred to as Ulster County in Ireland. So all of these nations work together collectively under one government. Okay, they each do retain some independence and certainly can make decisions for themselves, but ultimately policy is um, conducted in London for the national government. Okay. Scotland and Wales do try very hard, of course, to preserve their distinct culture and their distinct languages. And so, one of the things you will certainly hear in this general area is a family of languages called Gaelic. And in that, if you go to the UK or to Ireland and you say Gaelic, you're actually going to be referring to Scottish Gaelic. We'll talk about Irish a little bit later. That can be different depending on what you've heard in the United States. So certainly Welsh being a very distinct language in Wales, and then you of course have Scottish Gaelic, or sometimes just called Gaelic in Scotland. So looking at the UK's economy, okay, it should be noted that the Industrial Revolution began here roughly about 250 years ago. Part of the reason for that is its location. Um, It has large deposits of coal and iron, which were both going to be very necessary for the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. They had the technology, so the steam engine. They also had the workforce. You're also going to see that some of the earliest agricultural advancements, like crop rotation, begin here in the UK as well. So certainly a history of innovation in the United Kingdom. Today, manufactured goods still make up one of the leading exports as well as machinery. You'll see especially a lot of agricultural equipment has its headquarters in the United Kingdom and still is largely produced there. Not universally, but certainly some of the companies that you might be referred to in the US have some tie back to the UK. Computer and electronics are also starting to replace some of the older industries, and banking, insurance, communications, as well as healthcare employ the most amount of people in the UK. Farming is still very efficient, um, yet due to a lack of space and a growing population, they still need to import about a third of their food. And so still certainly will be reliant on the continent of Europe or the mainland of Europe for some of those, as well as countries like the United States and Canada. Looking at the government of the United Kingdom, we could use two different terms to refer to the government in the UK. And the first one I'm going to use is a parliamentary democracy. Okay? Be a little bit familiar with this if you've watched some of our other videos, partially because we've talked about some of the influence of the UK already in Central America as well as Canada. Both certainly like Belize and Canada, both former colonies of the British Empire. So what does that look like in the UK? Well, you've got your two houses, which make up your legislature. You have the House of Commons, which is largely selected by a prime minister when they form a new government, but certainly still elected by the people. And then you've got the House of Lords, which tends to have a little less of a democratic process, typically nobles who have very little power. And then, of course, you've got your prime minister, who's elected by the people as well. And this certainly holds the majority of the power for the United States. However, we could also describe the UK as a constitutional monarchy because you do still have a monarchy here. But just like we've talked about in the past, a constitutional monarchy, that monarch doesn't have any major power, as opposed to an absolute monarchy when they absolutely do. In fact, they might have all the power, like, say, Saudi Arabia, for example. So when we look at some of that transition, we know that the UK has gone through some major changes in its involvement with the European Union, and certainly with the phenomenon known as Brexit is now independent of the EU, but certainly still will have to have a very close economic and political relationship with um, the EU. And so certainly after Brexit passed, David Cameron stepped down. Theresa May tried to get a deal done but wasn't able to, was then later replaced by Boris Johnson, who was also able. Your current reigning queen, is Queen Elizabeth II. And then it should be noted certainly that the monarchy is certainly beginning to change with some of its prominent members leaving the royal life, and that being Harry and Meghan, who I believe now reside in Canada. So looking at the people and the culture of the UK is home to about 60 million people, and it's a very urban population. About 90% live in urban areas. London is the capital, or the national capital of the UK. It's also certainly the capital of England, and it's home to about 9 million people. So certainly you're looking at here, these red areas would be your more densely populated areas in the UK. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the Republic of Ireland. So Ireland is very rich in peat, which is certainly dug from bogs and can be used for a variety of different things, including certainly making and distilling partially into alcohol. The economy, largely based on agriculture, very different than the UK. Certainly potatoes, wheat, barley, sugar beets, turnips, and of course, certainly sheep, beef, and dairy, also making up the livestock as a portion of their agriculture. Manufacturing does employ the most people, but it should be noted that, again, agriculture plays a bigger role in Ireland than it does in the UK. Processed food, beverages, certainly the textiles as well as pharmaceuticals and computer equipment typically are your areas that employ the most people. Ireland is also a part of the EU, and certainly one of the things that needed to be negotiated when Brexit did occur was this border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And certainly there is a very distinct history here. So after becoming independent in the early 20s, the 1920s that is, from Britain, Ireland and Northern Ireland got into a series of violent actions known as the Troubles in Irish history, and particularly between two groups, the Nationalists and the Loyalists in Northern Ireland, and a large part of the violence focusing in the city of Belfast. So the nationalists are mostly Catholic and typically um, were wanting Northern Ireland to remain as part of the Republic of Ireland as opposed to staying in the UK. And then the loyalists were mostly Protestant. So yes, there's definitely a religious um, component here, wanted, of course, to stay in the UK. So the issue, of course, was whether Northern Ireland being a part or should be a part of the United Kingdom. There was a peace agreement reached in 1998, and there has been since then some occasional violence, but certainly much more peaceful than it used to be during the 1980s and early 1990s. And certainly, um, you're looking at, the IRA certainly being one of those groups, terrorist groups that were involved in the fighting here with the Irish Republican Army. Looking at the Irish people, most people in Ireland can trace their ancestry back to the Celts or the Celtic people who came to Ireland around 500 BCE. And when you look at the languages of Ireland, you'll predominantly hear English, but as you get into the more western parts of Ireland, you'll actually hear a lot more Irish. And so, for example, students in Ireland will learn both English and Irish, depending, of course, on which course they're taking. In most classes will be taught in English, but you will still, of course, be taught Irish. A little bit smaller amount of the population lives in urban areas, which is why farming plays a bigger role, but about 58% live in urban areas. Dublin is your largest and your capital city of the Republic of Ireland, and it's home to about 545,000 people, so quite a bit smaller than the UK. And it should be noted, certainly, the Celtic music, both Scottish as well as Irish, has certainly had a big influence, and certainly you will see Irish as the second leading European ancestry group in total number in the United States. So, and then that distinct music in Ireland comes in the form of jigs and reels, and certainly encourage you to check those out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up our video for today. Um, Look at the check-in quiz here to check on your learning. For those of you who are in my class, make sure that you've been following along with the guided notes. Ask any questions that you have. And certainly for number 3, remember it's all the green. And of course, from our discussion on Columbia, is that precious green stone. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great day.